さて、
What's going on, guys? It's been about a week or so since CEO ended, and after looking back, either like in YouTube comments, the Twitch chat, or just people asking me, I kept saying the same thing. Who am I playing? Am I playing Zamasu or am I playing Labcoat? I can't believe he dropped Zamasu. I can't believe he dropped Labcoat. Why the hell would he do such a thing? So I figured I'd make this just to explain myself exactly on what the heck was going on with CEO and what the hell was going on with my team. But just for those of you who don't want to hear any of the details or anything like that and just want to know what the hell the answer is both. I am playing both Zamasu and Labcode. Neither of them have been dropped, and neither of them are primarily on the main team at the same time. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that they're co-mids. Point for sure right now is Gotenks. Anchor for sure right now is Beerus. But the mid will change based on who my opponent is, or based on what team they're playing. Where sometimes it'll be Zamasu, and other times it'll be Labcoat. The main reason for the change is that if you look at my old team, Labcoat point, Zamasu mid, Beerus anchor. The main issue with that team, and it was an issue before the patch 2, was that both Zamasu and Beerus are very meter hungry, and in a way so is Labcoat because of the amount of EX moves that she wants to use. But it was fine back then because of the fact that Labcoat built a lot of bars. She built 2.5 bars of combos, so you didn't really notice it very much. But now, thanks to the 50% meter nerf and Zamasu's 75% meter nerf, which I still find very weird because he didn't build much meter to begin with, the main issue with that team now is just straight up meter. Labcoat doesn't build enough, Zamasu doesn't build any, and Beerus I try to save for last. So he's the only one that could build meter, but I want him to be the last character so no one ever comes in with meter, which is a big struggle for this team because if you want to do damage with Zamasu, you need meter. So basically what that meant is my team needed a battery. And I just ended up going with Gotenks because straight up synergy wise, and because I didn't really want to try and learn all the character-specific optimals with Baby. There really isn't any other reason. I just didn't want to do that. If you do that, you'll probably be better off. Baby is incredibly strong, but I decided to go with Gotenks. But that left the question, who for mid? It's kind of an obvious statement that everyone's just going to point out to just play Zamasu. But I decided instead I'm going to duo mid. And as for why I'm doing that, if we look at the state of the meta right now, which is, we don't really know much. The patch hasn't been out for that long. We've had one big tournament, and it was incredibly diverse. We saw Jiren's, Blue Vegetas, UI, Videl, Teen Gohan, 21, Broly, Krillin, Baby, Ginyu, etc., etc., etc. We saw so many characters that it's hard to point out specifically who's in the meta. But what I can point out, though, is who I think Zamasu struggles against. Zamasu struggles against characters like Majin 21, like Jiren, like Baby. Characters that either can fill the screen faster than he can get going, or characters that can clash or counter his projectile game. And if either of those happen, Zamasu's not going to have a good time. But what character does do well into those? Jiren's counter. Labcoat's got an anti-air. Filling the screen with Ki Blast. Labcoat's spin goes through it. Labcoat actually counters quite a few of the characters that Zamasu is weak against. So because of that, I think actually going with a duo mid is actually my best bet. If we look back at the games that I decided which character to play on during CEO, the first match here that's been playing on screen was myself versus Lucar in top 16 winners. If we look at Lucar's team, Lucar is playing Videl, UI Goku, and Android 16. None of these characters do very well against Zamasu. They don't have UI Goku's 2S is the only move that really hits in the air. None of them have a good way to catch him out of the air. 16 assists requires them to be on the ground. Videl's very, very strong on the ground. So none of them do very well into Zamasu. And now let's look on the flip side of that. We have a team that is very anti-Zamasu. We got Krillin rocks flying everywhere along with his Ki Blast and Beam. We have Baby filling the screen with Ki Blast and basically everything known to mankind that's going to make Zamasu not be able to get his game plan going. But Again, let's look back at what I mentioned before and what exactly is going on with Garlic's team. Key blasts. Lots and lots of key blasts. Baby's got about what, like 8 different versions of them. Krillin loves firing those key blasts, and Ginyu summons the Ginyu Force, which spinning goes through. So in this case scenario, playing Zamasu into this team would be a massive struggle. Let's just straight up say it. Zamasu will not have a good time against this team, compared to Labcoat though, who just goes through literally everything Garlic does. So that's where there's not really much counterpicking going on in Dragon Ball. Let's just say it. A lot of characters do play fairly similar, since they do all have do have a lot of the same mechanics. There's just some things that they prefer over others. Some like to zone a little more. Some like to rush in a little more. But for the most part, a lot of characters play the same, thanks to everyone having the same movement speed, the same super dash, same vanish, and all that fun stuff. But when it comes to Lab Coat, she is able to counter the characters that beat Zamasu. So in this case scenario, it actually makes sense to actually use her or use Zamasu as a counter pick. And against Garlic's team, and Garlic even told me afterwards when we talked about this, I asked him straight up, which would you rather have seen me play, Zamasu or Labcoat? When I followed him, he's like, oh, I would really wish you played Zamasu. He knows it. We all know it. Zamasu is a bad matchup here, but Labcoat loves it. However, it's not exactly completely all cut and dry. If this character's here, play this character. This character's here, play this character. Sometimes it isn't that easy. In the case of Pred's team, it's one of those scenarios. 21 and Zamasu don't really go well for Zamasu, where Labcoat does pretty well onto her. Zamasu and Labcoat both don't have a ton of fun into Labcoat, which is still weird. Labcoat counters Labcoat, and they both have a good time against Teen Gohan. So who to play? I gave it a little bit of a favor towards Labcoat, which is why I decided to start with her in this scenario. But like I said, if I played Zamasu, it would have worked fine here as well. But because of the 21, I gave a slight edge to Labcoat. And was that the right choice? I honestly don't know. Because even though I did win the first game and had a very close second game and barely lost in a last touch scenario, Game 3 did not go very well for me, and Labcoat honestly was struggling up against Pred, probably just due to the fact that he has a lot of experience against it, and she just wasn't doing as much as I would like. So I decided to make the swap to Zamasu, not because Labcoat was suddenly bad or the terrible choice or anything like that. It was just the fact that at that point I needed a change. I knew Zamasu would at least somewhat work well, and I felt like I needed to do something in order to change the momentum. That's why I made the swap. Thankfully, the swap did end up working, and I ended up winning 3-2 over Pred, and then made it to grand finals to fight against Garlic, where we pulled the Labcoat back out just like we did in the winner semi-match, and we ended up winning the tournament and beating Garlic 3-0 in the grand finals. Now, like I said before, counter picks are not required. They're not actually, I shouldn't say they're not recommended, but because they can be useful. But it is something that is not typically used in Dragon Ball FighterZ. But I do plan at the moment to stick with it. I do plan to look at other characters, of course. The new patch is, of course, still new. It's only been out for around a month at this point. Still a lot to do, still a lot to figure out. The meta isn't officially defined yet or anything. Everyone's got their suspicions on who they think is top tier and who's not top tier. But that'll continue to be rounded out over the course of probably the next couple of months, or at least over at EVO next month when we get more international players showing up for a much larger event. But in the case that I don't end up making any swaps, I am planning on still sticking with the Zamasu and Labcoat duo, because it does seem to cover most matchups, and it does seem to benefit me a lot more than if I just played one or the other. And so there is the much longer version of what happened at CEO and why I'm making the swap. Is it Labcoat or Zamasu? No, it's both. And I think both is working very well, and I think both will continue to do so. So thank you guys for watching. Until next time, I will talk to you guys later.